Howdy ho, folks. Howdy ho. Howdy ho, America and points beyond. Who has power and what are they doing with it? Politics is not a natural act.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm busted that I never heard that one from you, Tom.
There's so many feisty fighters against the greedheads and boneheads. So grab a libation, join the conversation. It's the personal side of politics, and it is surprisingly tasty. Indeed. Howdy ho, folks. Here we are again with another Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe, otherwise known as my kitchen. But it's the round table that we welcome you to be a part of, particularly now because we're in the dog days of summer, which means a bunch here in Texas. So we invite you to hydrate as we discuss with any kind of libation that you might want, anything from water to I've got my own stereophonic beer here, a local brew made here in Austin, Texas. So grab yourself a cool one. This is the 60th day of 100-degree plus here in Austin, Texas. In fact, even as we gather here in the evening in Austin tonight, it's about 103 degrees. This led General, I believe it's General Sheridan, I'm not positive, but I think it was General Sheridan, who was a federal soldier, officer, sent to Texas for something or other. And he allowed, as how after his tenure here, that he happened to own both Texas and hell. He would rent out Texas and live in hell. It's a better place, he thought. So that's the situation that we're in. But we've got a hot topic for you here tonight for the roundtable discussion. We want you to be a part of it. Deanna, as always, DZ is right there. There she is. Ready, ready to take your observations, insights, humor, anything you want to throw into the party here tonight.
Yeah, I'm drinking something called Volley Tropical Mango. All I know is that my cousin Jack gave it to me, and it has tequila in it, and so I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I also want to know what everybody out there, where y'all are watching from, what you're drinking, bring it to the table. If you've got questions for Hightower and our guest tonight, leave them in the comments. I will be reading everything and fielding things, dropping it in there whenever we've got something to say. So please let us know, where are you watching? What are you drinking? And also we noticed the internet connection is a little bit funky tonight, so we're working on that. But just take it away, Hightower.
Yeah, well, we got some rubber bands that are going to connect to the internet. It'll be all right down the road. So the topic tonight is whither, sort of a Shakespearean word, whither the Democratic Party. We got the establishment within that party, the consultants, the money people, et cetera, saying, go slow, go low, go to the moderate middle. But we've got a happy hour compadre tonight who says that leads to the withering of the Democratic Party. As I've often said, the real political spectrum in America is not right to left. Woody Guthrie said right wing, chicken wing, doesn't mean anything to me. But the real political spectrum is top to bottom. That's where most people actually live. That's experience, not a theory. And our guest tonight is a fellow who says it's not a matter of going right to left, it's a matter of going to the people. Why don't the Democratic Party get back out with the people themselves again? And that's the thing I love about our happy hour chats, is that we get to meet so many interesting people that are not, they're well known, but they're not known in the progressive movement as fully as they need to be, and that's why we bring them on to the air with us, emerging progressive leaders who actually lead. Imagine leaders who lead. Ro Khanna is our guest tonight, and he is a leading one of these leaders who lead, and he is an inside-outside fighter, linking Congress, where he serves, to the grassroots. Member of Congress from a mix of California's Silicon Valley, the South Bay working class, and rural and poor communities as well. Ro Khanna, thanks so much for being with us. Great to have you.
It's awesome to be on. I love the promo. You've had some amazing guests and interesting guests.
Yes. Well, we always try to do that because, the people who are really doing things are not the people who are the classic ones who are on TV all the time. Rather, it's the people who are actually out there doing the work, and you have certainly been one of those. I want to just explore a little bit with you, Ro, your own history, because it's so rich and so important, and most of our folks won't be familiar with it. But your grandparents, I guess it was, immigrated from India, and they weren't just immigrants. They were people who participated in the Little D Democratic movement over there. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. So my parents came over in the 1960s. I was born in Philadelphia in 1976, our bicentenary. But my grandfather, you were talking about, he was part of India's independence movement and spent years in jail with Gandhi in the 1940s. And was an activist for human rights, spent 15 years as part of that. And that's, of course, what inspired in part the Dr. King's movement here, Nelson Mandela. So he had a great influence on me.
Oh, great credentials that you bring to it here. And you, so you were raised in California?
In Pennsylvania. So I was born in Philadelphia. And,
you were a national treasure then, literally, Pennsylvania, now in California, but you went to school in Chicago, right?
Went to school in Chicago, but grew up in Eagles fan, Phillies fan, Flyers, watching Rocky movies, playing Little League baseball. like anyone who grows up in.
I won't hold that against you with the Eagles fan business. I'm a Giants
I had my time in the vet stadium in the 700 bleacher seats. That was an experience in itself. But and then moved to. My folks are still actually in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County. And I went to school in Chicago, and then after law school, found myself in Silicon Valley, where I went out to do stuff with technology. I mean, I always thought that was such a fascinating part of the world where people were inventing things, batteries, electric vehicles, new technology. The human genome was being coded, and wanted to go out and be part of that.
Well, one thing that impressed me is that you were a lawyer in Silicon Valley working for, maybe some billionaires. I don't know. But the important thing is that you also, on a pro bono basis, went out and worked with farm workers and went out and worked with people who were not making $1 million salaries.
I did. I was very involved after Katrina at this place, the Mississippi Center of Justice. You may remember that the federal government provided money to some of the people who were victims of the hurricanes, but a lot of that money was being stolen by contractors. It wasn't actually getting to the people that it should have. And so I spent a lot of time down there working with the Mississippi Center of Justice on contractor fraud and making sure the money was getting to them, and did a number of other things pro bono in terms of standing up for civil rights and racial justice and amicus briefs on housing and other policies to the courts.
It's a thing that we point out quite a bit here on this program and in my work generally, is that some of the most progressive, energetic, far-reaching work being done for little d democracy in our country is being done in the most unexpected places. It's not just San Francisco and New York City and et cetera. It is out in the countryside, particularly in the South, like you were just reiterating of your own experience there. And now that you've found yourself a member of Congress, there was a guy back at back in the early 1900s who was a humorist, sort of a precursor of Will Rogers, named Ken Hubbard. and he said that every now and then an innocent person gets sent to Congress.
I
So
guess that's better than Mark Twain, who said America has only one distinctive criminal class, the United States Congress.
Right. Well, you're innocent, but not innocent in the ways of the world. You're innocent in terms of trying to stand up for people. In fact, as I understand it, you're one of only 6 members of Congress. 6. Is that right? 6 members of Congress who do not accept PAC contributions from corporations, or PAC contribution, period.
Yeah, but I don't, and I never have, never taken a dime of it. But I happen to represent a district that has people who have done well. I think the challenge is not just to get people to take a voluntary pledge like me. The challenge is to get this special interest money out of politics. And one of the things I've been strongly leading on is the idea of democracy dollars. Make every voter a donor, meaning give everyone $100 that they can spend on public campaigns to dwarf out the big money. And until we do that, we really have a very challenging system where you get things like what happened with the carried interest loophole. Here's what I don't get. I represent more billionaires than probably any other member in Congress. And I am saying tax the billionaires, tax the carried interest, but tax more, have a wealth tax. How is this a hard vote for anyone else? I mean, find me a district with more billionaires, and okay, then you can argue. But the guy representing all the billionaires are saying tax, they keep sending it back.
Well, let me point out for people who don't know, the carried interest, that's a technical Wall Street and Washington kind of term, but what it is a taxation loophole that allows extraordinarily rich people to be able to make money off of their money without it being taxed, which is
Jim. Let me try a simple way. So you make revenue, or you make money as a firefighter, as a teacher. You pay tax.
Right.
Now, if you put $100 into a company and you make some money off that, or you $100 into something, you'll pay less tax, a capital gains tax. That's okay. Whether that's fair or not, we can discuss. But these folks are making a ton of money. They're getting a lower tax rate than teachers and nurses, and they're not putting in any of their own money. They're putting other people's money in. They're just managing that, and they're getting a tax rate less than what teachers and nurses pay. So it's a total boondoggle. The only reason it stays in, every politician campaigns against it, and then somehow they always find someone to block it at the last minute, and that's because they have so much money.
And that was cinema in this particular round of fights. U.S. Senator, purported Democrat from Arizona, who has been a bane in the existence, a roadblock on the road to progress that Democrats like Ro Khanna are trying to fight for. But yet, that very same bill where that provision that was in it to tax those that carried interest privileged people got excluded from it, thanks to cinema. But yet that bill has a lot of good stuff in it. Our pal Bernie Sanders, and by the way, Ro Khanna was the national co-chair of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign.
Not quite as important as your role, Jim, in getting Bernie Texas.
We all do our part.
I was talking to Bernie and some of the folks around him, and I said, well, who's there in Texas who's part of the movement? And they kept saying Jim. I said, he couldn't have been responsible for all 30% that Bernie got. There's got to be someone else.
Yeah. There are many people.
You're being humble. They said all roads go through Jim.
I'm just a little stick of dynamite. That says trying to fire up other people, and people are ready to be fired up. Don't you find that? In I know in your own district, but also you do a lot. You travel the country. As I said earlier, you're an inside player within Congress, but you're also an outside player relating to the grassroots. And talk a little bit about that, because the Democratic Party seems confused as to whether it ought to be a grassroots party or an inside Washington party.
Well, Jim, I was just, let me talk about where I've been traveling. I was in Anderson, Indiana, Newcastle, Indiana, and Janesville, Wisconsin, Dubuque, Iowa. I went to factory towns. Let me tell you some of the stuff I heard, because I think it would do our party good to have more folks just show up in these communities and listen, not talk, not announce themselves, just listen. And one person, Fred, came up to me in Newcastle, Indiana, with a binder about this thick, plant closure after plant closure, all of the documented pictures of every plant that had closed in the last 20 to 30 years. And he said, you know what this means? It's not just the loss of jobs. And this is, I think, what people sometimes miss. It was divorces, because when folks got laid off those plants, sometimes one person had to go work somewhere else to find work, and the spouse didn't want to move, and the family got torn apart. It meant suicides. People had brought to me notes that they had saved, or copies of things of suicide notes that people had written when those plants closed. It meant the total lack of community. Folks knew these folks. They were celebrating Christmas together, holidays together. And the sad thing is, they say we're still telling our kids to leave. There are no new jobs in these communities. Whoever thought, and it was both parties that thought, that it would be a good idea for pure corporate greed to offshore all our production, that was about the dumbest strategy that you could have as the United States of America. Who does that? I mean, we didn't invent the car, we mass produced it. We didn't invent the jet engine, we mass produced it. And then we think it doesn't matter to make masks in this country, to make baby formula in this country. And we're paying the consequence, and we've destroyed communities, and they're angry, and they should be angry.
Yeah. Ro Khanna, member of Congress from the Silicon Valley. Yet, Ro Khanna is also, I grew up in the Red River Valley of Texas, among a bunch of dirt farmers, basically. But honest people, hardworking people, straightforward people. And Ro Khanna, from the Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, serves on the Agriculture Committee of the Congress of the United States. What have you learned there?
Well, I got on the Agriculture Committee because I was passionate about how do we get these jobs from Silicon Valley and tech jobs and new manufacturing jobs across the country. It turns out that the Ag Department has jurisdiction over rural broadband. I would never have thought of that. Yep. But that's why I got on, because a lot of the economic development was all through the Ag Committee. And so I've learned that there are a lot of parts of our country that are still not connected to the internet. I've learned how hard it is for family farmers. I mean, they've been basically blocked out by these large agribusinesses, these CAFOs that have pushed the family farmers out, where family farmers sometimes aren't even making their costs back.
Right.
And it's sad to see a lot of times the factory farms, they're owned by people who don't even live in the community, and they're polluting the drinking water, or having no concern for the local community because they have no accountability.
And the biggest farmer in America is Bill Gates. He owns 240,000 acres.
I did not know.
Farmland. He just bought another 2,100 acres up in North Dakota. And North Dakota has an anti-corporate farming law. So his corporation, through which he bought this farmland, should not be allowed to be a farmer in North Dakota under the law. But the Republican Attorney General was persuaded to declare Bill Gates a farmer.
Yeah, no, I had no idea about that. People may say, well, why does this guy who represents Silicon Valley care? Why am I out there in these communities? And it's not just because I grew up in a suburban Pennsylvania. It's because fundamentally, I don't believe that the way our country is going to have a strong democracy if half this country in places like Silicon Valley and New York have all of this prosperity, and if we just watch silently while places across America have been totally deindustrialized, totally left out, and the young folks there don't have the same opportunities. You referenced Will Rogers. He used to call it producer's democracy. That was his term. He said you had to have everyone produce. You had to have everyone live up to their potential. In my district, people are very optimistic about America. They think the American dream is alive and well. But the only shot we have is to recognize that we made a huge mistake, that we shouldn't have had this unfettered globalization, that we shouldn't have had, capitalism run amok with corporations go wherever they want, that we needed a destroyed community. And when you have someone from Silicon Valley who's gone to a bunch of these fancy schools say it's okay to have economic patriotism, we should root for jobs coming here. We should have a tax on these companies that offshore. That people say, okay, yeah, and this guy, he's been to the quote unquote fancy schools, and he's saying that what we've been saying for the past 40 years was right, and that the parties were wrong, and that this offshoring of production has really hurt us. Economically, it's pulling us apart, and by the way, it's hurting us in continuing to lead as an economic power.
This is Ro Khanna. He's a member of Congress from Silicon Valley area of California, but he's a member of Congress who fights for ordinary working stiffs, and that's why he's on our show tonight. Tell us what you think of what Ro is talking about here, whether you've had your own experience in this world of inequality, in which a few are doing extremely well, and a whole bunch are not doing well at all, basically treading water, and some are sinking. That's the big issue facing America, in my view, in the long haul.
That's right.
Too few people control too much of the money and power, and that's got to change, and that will only change if we, the ordinary people, begin to take the kind of steps that Ro is talking about here, and to build a politics at a grassroots level that will take on those moneyed elites. And it is so important what Ro just said to me, which is that that farmers have the same situation as poor people in our urban areas. They have the same situation as rural poor throughout the South and the Midwest and et cetera. They have the same situation as students trying to make a go of it. Same situation as elderly people facing medical bills and et cetera. The same. And Jesse Jackson said it well.
Yeah.
40, 50 years ago, we might not all come over on the same boat, but we're in the same boat now. That's a powerful political reality, Ro, if we can put it together.
He was absolutely right. It's you've had with jobs leaving, you've had people in some of the urban centers, African Americans, face the same despair, the same destruction of community that today you see in white rural communities, in factory towns, which are predominantly white. And that's why I think you can have a coalition of folks across race, across gender, across religion, saying we have not had a fair shot. It's factual. This is not anecdotal. Let me just give you one statistic, only one number that I think should create outrage in this country. Since 1980, the working class and middle class has lost 25% of their wealth. 25% of wealth has been taken from the working class and middle class since 1980. And then people say, well, why are they angry? Why are people angry? Of course they're angry. And, top 10% control 72% of the wealth in this country.
That's right.
It's wrong. And it was decisions we made. We watched as these companies just shipped jobs offshore. We watched as they concentrated the economic gains to the top. I can tell you, there are a lot of things they can call me. They can't call me a socialist because my district has $10 trillion of wealth. And I'll tell you something. We're making more money in America than we've ever made before. More money than ever before. It is appalling, the conditions of the working and middle class. It's appalling that kids are graduating with $30,000 in debt. It's appalling that people go into medical debt in this country to have a baby or to have a medical procedure. It is appalling that we can't give a living wage to the folks who are working at Burger King and working at fast food restaurants. It is unconscionable that every young person in this country can't get a preschool education, something they did in France in 1890. In 1890, they had universal preschool. And we're living in the richest country at the richest moment for that country, where they've got more billionaires than they know what to do with in parts of my zip code, in my district. It is
That's right.
And by the way, Deanna's going to bring in some people, their comments that they've got. But I would add to your pointing out about the French preschool and et cetera, we had it in America too in the 1940s and 1950s. It's not something that's unsuitable for America. We have been pioneers in this. We've just got to bring it back. Deanna, talk to us about folks.
Holy cow. My favorite thing about the role that I play on this show is getting to watch all of the little hearts and happy faces go up on the screen every time people are agreeing and happy and all of this stuff. Loads
That's
of
better
great
than
comments.
Twitter, huh? In Twitter, you
Oh
just get
my God.
criticized.
So much better than Twitter. Oh my God. It is fantastic. I do want to give a shout out. We have people all over the country as usual. Hightower knows this is my favorite part. It's like romper room. We got Colorado, we got California, we got Eastern New York State, upstate, Florida, Oregon, Ohio, also Texas, and so far furthest away is England. Somebody stayed up late in England to watch us tonight, so that's fantastic. While I'm here, I also just want to do a quick couple of shout outs to ourselves. If you would like to hear more from Hightower, you can absolutely do that. Do you know how you can do that, Hightower?
I don't, but I sure would like to know.
I'm so glad you asked. You could go to hightowerlowdown.org/email and sign up for our regular, nearly weekly email that we send out. If you are watching this later and you would like to share this show with your friends, you can go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew, and you'll find all of our episodes, including this one at the show on the website. And I am going to drop back out again. Take it away. Tell us more about everything.
All right. Well, I want to explore now with Ro because the Democrats have taken a step forward in the last week or so with the passage of this big piece of legislation. And little known is the fact that Ro Khanna played a role in this because, surprisingly, to me at least, one of Ro Khanna's buddies, maybe that's going too far, I don't know, we'll ask, is Joe Manchin, the coal magnate Democrat from West Virginia, who is not generally
There go the
considered.
smiley faces.
You're right. You're right. Who's not generally considered on the progressive side of things. In fact, we'll put up a little picture here of Joe, not of Joe, but of where he lives in Washington. You may know there I am waving from the Capitol Yacht Club, just in the tidal basin of Washington, D.C., just blocks from the U.S. Capitol. And you'll see that little flag on that boat way up there. That is Joe Manchin's yacht. He lives on a yacht in the tidal basin in Washington, D.C., staffed by all sorts of servants or whatever. And he's got some sort of a car. I don't know if it's a Jaguar or what, but it drives him those 6 blocks or so that he has to go from the yacht to the Capitol. Anyway, he's taken care of. He seems to always be taking care of himself. Yet, Ro Khanna has got a little bit different picture of Joe Manchin, and has been instrumental in getting Manchin to go ahead and just bite the bullet and be a little bit of a small D Democrat.
Well, Jim, I went into Beckley because when I was doing Let's Get Tech Jobs into different parts of the country, I wanted to go to Beckley, West Virginia. I knew Gordon G there, and that's how I got to know Manchin.
Makes sense.
In 2017. And, when the deals fell apart in 2021, Manchin called me on 2022, New Year's Day. He said, I still want to do something. I want to spend money on climate, and I'm for all the innovation parts. I'm not for the sticks. But I said to folks, I said, look, I was in the Obama administration in 2008 to 2010. And when we didn't get climate done, it was devastating. And now it's 12 years later, and we have the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and we don't get something done here, and we again don't get climate done. It's going to be a disaster. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to try to get something substantial. And I told Senator Manchin, I said, you have to be for the big spending on solar, on wind, on batteries, on geothermal, on all the renewables. And if you're over the 300 billion number, and if you don't got the tax credits and the massive investment in climate, the largest ever, then there's going to be room for compromise. I mean, look, I want universal childcare. We talked about preschool, but I understand we're not going to get everything. Let's just come up with at least this. Now, there are parts in there that have been added that, I'm not thrilled with in terms of cuts to some of the funding for environmental justice, in terms of the prioritization of certain projects that if we don't fix or if we're not careful could lead to more things like Mountain Valley Pipeline being approved, which I oppose. But overall, this is at least going to put us in the direction of getting solar manufacturing, wind manufacturing, renewable energy in America. And it's a down payment, a 10% down payment, but that's better than zero.
Yes, and that's and I want to probe you just a little bit there, because you mentioned one thing that is particularly irritating to me that happened. That a part of the price of getting Manchin, not by you, but by the Democrats generally, of getting Manchin on board to support these generally good things, is the allowing of that Mountain Valley Pipeline to go through West Virginia. Not because I'm not angry just about, pipelines are all over this damn country, and that's a huge fight for me. But this particular one is going through an area that had defeated it. But because the grassroots environmental movement had managed to stop that pipeline. And this is an area of the country, I don't know, a lot of people aren't quite aware. You think of the mountains of West Virginia, they're beautiful, mountain home, take me home, et cetera. But the mountaintop removal explosion of that state by the coal giants. I think of John Prine's song about Paradise Lost, and so much about that state. That hard hit people fighting hard and been exploited by these corporations, and the people in the environment been exploited and still are being exploited to some degree. But the important thing to me is that when grassroots people actually stand up and make a stand, then we need to stand with them. But here we are in a situation, and benefits on the other side from Manchin getting out of the way of preventing benefits, but we had to give him this pipeline. Have you any sense of the anger that those grassroots people, environmental fighters in West Virginia have?
I do, because I chair the environment subcommittee, and actually just coincidentally today at 4:00, I had a call with 15 environmental groups and some of the lawyers and some of the folks who actually are from those communities who were fighting the pipeline. And they said, Ro, we won. We won in court. We won. We mobilized everyone and we won. And what the side deal with Schumer would do, not the Inflation Reduction Act, but the side deal, if though that permitting becomes law, is basically change the law. Change after the activists have won, it would change the law and allow Mountain Valley Pipeline to be built, even because the court's decisions won't be enforceable if the law changes. So we don't have to accept the significant gutting of the National Environmental Protection Act, that is NEPA, that would make Mountain Valley Pipeline a reality. I mean, there are other compromises in the bill that we are going to have to accept this time, and that is, the sale of oil and gas leases for every renewable lease. I don't love that, obviously, but if we can stop the permitting, that's not as bad if we have control over the permitting. But on the side deal, if we allow NEPA to be gutted and changed and have just a 2-year requirement on any project and make it such that priority projects can go through in an expedited way, that's not just hurting the Mountain Valley Pipeline, that's hurting community activists across America. And that's not something I support, and that's not in this bill we're voting on Friday.
Yeah, well, that is the challenge for Democrats, and the good news is that we go back to those communities. I mean, we can't just say, "Oh well, you lost, you won, but you lost." A farmer friend of mine back when Bill Clinton was doing NAFTA and all that stuff, he said, I don't mind losing when we lose, but I hate losing when we win. And okay, so they won, and then it turns out they've lost, but they haven't lost. The fight goes on.
Fight goes on, and the fight's going to be on the permitting stuff. Yeah.
And the important thing is, though, is in terms of our topic tonight, whether the Democratic Party, we need to be out there. You're doing it, but we've got to take some of your colleagues and get out there into those areas. They never see Democrats. They don't know that we're fighting for them, and too often we're not. So I think it's important, and indeed the passage of this bill, this bill which has so much good in it for drug prices and et cetera, things we can talk about yet here this evening. But we've got to, but Joe Biden needs to get on a train like Harry Truman and go across this country. He needs to sign that bill.
I said that to them, and they say he's planning on doing it. So let's see.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be more than a gesture, more than a stunt.
And it's got to be in these communities. One of the things, I was going to Newcastle, Indiana, and my colleague said, "Well, why are you going there? It's a red state. We're never going to win it back." And Newcastle is a 75% Republican district by Greg Pence. I said, I'm going there precisely because of that, because we can't do every maneuver based on politics. And, I was talking to the steel workers, and I'm talking about how we got to make steel in America again and have the government help with businesses. That was FDR, our victory of production. He basically set up industry in America. That was the Democrats. Totally. And here's what, so someone was with me, a reporter, and stayed back and asked them, what do you think of this guy? It's an Indian American guy from the Valley, and he's talking about making steel. And this guy who said, I was for Trump. I thought the Make It in America thing was a Trump thing. I didn't realize Democrats were for Make It in America. And I said, well, if we're not going to show up, if we're not going to talk, then of course they're not going to think that. So we've got to go into these communities with humility. We've got to go into these communities.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That we made mistakes as a party. NAFTA, most favored nation status to China. We went from an $80 billion trade deficit to China to now $350 billion directly because of most favored nation status. And let me say this, because I am a man of peace. I want peace. I don't want a Cold War with China, but I'll tell you something, what will cause instability and war is the trade deficit. If you look at the cause of the Opium Wars in the early 1800s, when Britain was wrong to invade China, it was because China wasn't buying anything from the West. Britain took Indian opium and sent it to China. They were totally wrong to do it. But the point of that whole thing is you can't have these kind of structural trade deficits or you breed resentment. We need to rebalance production. And these folks in these communities who lost plant after plant, factory after factory, while both parties basically said free trade, let's just, who cares if we're producing it? We just want the Nobel laureates here. Let's just invent it. That was insulting. And then we said, just go move to the jobs, as if a hometown didn't matter, as if the community didn't matter. So you got to start by just saying we were wrong. We not because now we're smarter than the people in the past. Just admit that we made mistakes as a country. If we don't admit that we were wrong, they're not going to hear us about going forward. And then we could say, here's what we're going to do to bring the new factories, to make sure that we can make masks in America, to make sure workers are going to have wages. Right. And I think we can win over some of these people in these communities.
I agree.
I just want to jump in here real quick and say you're getting a lot of props for this stuff in the comments. A lot of people completely agree. And this is something that we work on at the Hightower Lowdown. You can check out our new issue of the Hightower Lowdown, hightowerlowdown.org, like I said before, is all about what is happening in rural America. And for the record, rural doesn't automatically equal white. We know that 25% of rural communities these days are people of color. So yay for that. I also want to just talk a little bit about that and some of the questions that are coming up are a little bit about that relationship between grassroots organizers who are out there door knocking and who are out there building some of these relationships. This is some photos from our friends at Pierce County Grow in Wisconsin, in Western Wisconsin. They've been doing a ton of canvassing and door knocking out there. The photo on the left I particularly love because this is an educational event that they did on gerrymandering called Mappy Hour.
Mappy Hour? Mappy hour. I love it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
You got to have a sense of humor.
You really do. There are people, and we've gotten to know them over the last few months. They're doing really great work. And Representative, if you could speak to a little bit about that, about doing that hard work of the door knocking, of going out there. Like, where are the Democrats, and how do we as everyday people help change the party and help change the party's perspective away from, these kind of media consultants and, power brokers in DC and to people like, what's happening in Pierce County, Wisconsin.
Well, first of all, the people who are doing that, they're the hope for the party. They're the ones doing the hard work. They're the ones who are going to change the conversation. And here's what happens when you do that. You would never come up with a slogan like "Build Back Better." I mean, Jim, who talks like that at a bar? Okay, yeah, what we really need to do, Jim, is build back better. No, you say what we really need to do is make more stuff in America. Okay, there you go. Why can't that be that slogan, right? Why can't we just talk like real people talk?
Good. Exactly right.
and I think when you're out there in the community and you're listening to people and you're hearing people, then you get the message. Then you understand what the message is, as opposed to this top down. You poll, you ask for words, you have consultants come up with the message. That's because that's not going to be in touch. You got to talk to people. You got to use the language that people use and to connect. And so what folks are doing, but the problem is they're doing it with no support. They're doing it by themselves. And instead of building, what we ought to be doing is building the county parties, building the state legislature, building the grassroots organization. One of the things I've suggested at the White House, they don't take my advice, is, look, there are probably 1,000 county parties across America. Why don't we do a weekly conference call with all the chairs of those 1,000 county parties so that they're getting their feedback and they're getting some of the things that we're doing. And then that's filtering down. I rather that than put all of the resources just in the consultants. So
kill all the consultants. No, not kill them, but decommission them. Let's say that. But and you're mentioning that there's a great example of it that's relevant to our conversation here tonight, and that is West Virginia. The people of West Virginia have spent the last 6 years organizing to take over the Democratic Party at a grassroots level, because Joe Manchin has control of the Democratic Party, giving him the power. It literally, they got a 55 member state executive committee of the Democratic Party. Every seat belonged to him. He's loyal to him. And so then he controlled who could run for any Democratic office in the state. You couldn't run for state representative without Manchin's blessing, which meant the coal company blessing more often than not. Yet in the last 6 years, these people, just grassroots folks, they are not important people in terms of credentials or money and et cetera. They're just regular people. And they went out and they organized and they organized and they organized and they fought and they lost, they fought and they lost, they fought, and now they won. Last year, they won. This year they have won. They have taken over all but one of the state offices of the Democratic Party and control the majority of, and I think it's the vast majority of the executive committee of the Democratic Party. That is going to change politics in that state, because regular people, different people who are not obligated to coal interests or any other money interest are going to be able to run, and that's going to build. And they're doing it smartly. They're not starting out by saying, well, we'll take over the governorship or we'll take over the Senate. No, they're going to take over those county commission seats. They're going to take over those mayorships and city council positions throughout the community. That's how you build a real party. It's a long, it's a tedious, it's a hard process, but it's the most rewarding process because it's honest. And that's
you're 100% right. In fact, they reached out to me, and I'm going there on I think October 8th to go speak at one of the county parties that they've taken over in West Virginia, and that they've done the hard work. And that's not just happening in West Virginia. Judith Whitmer did it in Nevada. We've had people do it now in other states, and they're doing it at county parties. And you're right, that is the foundation. You want Medicare for all, you want free public college, you want stronger unions, you want to make sure that we get a living wage. the way to actually build the power is not just to spontaneously do it in a presidential campaign. It's to do it in building the county parties, the state parties, and in becoming part, taking back the party. And that's how we'll succeed.
And let me just say that, as Ro says, that is happening. Ro and my friend Larry Cohen, who's a former president of the Communication Workers of America, great Democratic fighter, is a leader in this Democratic Party reform movement all across the country and making great strides. And our friend Jane Klebb, who is the Democratic Party chair in Nebraska, is and fighting pipelines. I mean, putting together coalitions of farmers and Native Americans and environmentalists and workers. And I mean, it just the kind of gritty work that history is going to write about later on, but it's happening right now. And you can be a part of that wherever you are. There's some effort like this, and this group, Our Revolution, that Larry Cohen is the chair of the board of. They're the one group in America, progressive group, that is making a priority of these Democratic Party reforms to try to move little d democracy into the Democratic Party. So that's and we can put up an URL. Is that the initial? Should be.
Yes. Yeah, you did it. You did it.
I did it right. URL. Get your URL together, and connect up with Our Revolution, who will help you in your local area, your very county where you are, in your town where you are, to help democratize the Democratic Party. That is a first step. It's not the only step, but it's a first step that we have to take to actually build a little d FDR style, Eleanor Roosevelt style democracy in America. Talk to us, Deanna.
Oh, loads of stuff. Lots of love from the comments. Absolutely necessary, because the GOP's playbook has been to take over as many local positions as possible. Also, someone points out, look at what Beto's doing. Look at how Beto is changing Texas. Where did Beto get that idea to go to every county in Texas, Hightower? Where did he? Oh, did he? From you? From Megan? Yeah. I was at that meeting.
I gave hints.
Jim, what other good ideas do you have?
Oh my God. They involve beer. One good idea that I have, though, that I must share with you all, is that some of the folks that we mentioned, we've talked about Larry Cohen, we talked about Jane Klebb, we've talked about some incredible activists and all kinds of people that have been on this show. And how does this show get supported? How does this show get produced? Only because we don't take advertising, we don't take government money, we don't take funding, we don't take big grants, we don't take anything like that. It's an entirely reader and watcher and listener supported operation, the entire Hightower operation, all nonprofit. So you can make a donation, is what I am about to say.
Thank you.
You can help us out. You can have an impact and help us reach the people that we're talking about right now, and bring all of us into the fold and into the conversation together. You can go to hightowerlowdown.org/donate. And if you ever have any problems with any of that stuff or anything else in Hightower land, you can email me, Deanna@jimhightower.com. But yeah, we really appreciate your support and your love. And if you have something you can chip in the hat that is sitting on Hightower's head right now, we would much appreciate it. Thank you. I'll disappear now.
Beautiful, Deanna. Thank you so much. Well, Ro, it's so encouraging to talk to you. Just share with your general thoughts. I mean, it's so easy to be depressed these days by, of course, the right wing stuff that's going on, but also to some degree by the pusillanimous. That's a clean word, believe it or not. You can look it up. Attitude of the Democratic establishment. Yet, I sense, I certainly feel it, and I sense that you do as well, that we're not without hope, that we might get there with something big.
I'm hopeful. Hardly seeing how close Bernie Sanders came. People forget.
Yes.
They want to erase the 2020 election. I remember after Nevada thinking
Oh,
we
yeah.
were going to be helping him in the White House. I mean, he won the first 3 states, and usually if it was anyone else, they would have given him the nomination. You would
No,
go back. I can't think of another person who won the first 3 contests and then was denied the nomination. But the point is, he got almost all the way up the mountaintop, and that wasn't because of Bernie. That was because of all of you and people who are watching this show. And then you look at the young people, and you look at the organizing, and you look at what's happening on climate, and you look at finally people saying that we need workers' rights, and you look at workers organizing across this country, and you recognize people saying, yeah, we got to make stuff in America again, and people who are saying that it's no longer possible to have the medical debt that we do, and we need to cancel that. We need to have tuition-free college, and the debate has totally changed. And I guess as a student of American history, I say, look, this is a country that's had a lot of challenges, but we did defeat slavery. We did defeat the Nazism. We did defeat Jim Crow. We did defeat communism, and it's a resilient country. And I have no doubt that with people organized and this next generation, that we're going to emerge as having a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy and taking back our country and having a people-powered movement. And you're seeing already people taking back the parties. So it's not Bernie, though he deserves credit. It's not those of us in Congress. It's people on the ground.
Right. And that's building all across America. So we're so encouraged, and we're so grateful that you would join us here tonight, Ro. But most importantly, that we team up and keep in this fight together, and reach out and bring other allies. There may be a few other members of the Congress that that would like to be a little bolder than they have been, and we can help them get into this fight, and because it takes all of us to make this democracy's a mess. I mean, we're not a corporation. We can't just say you go do that, you go do that. We have to get people to get involved on the basis of something bigger than themselves. And that can be, we're not promising you, you're going to be a millionaire, but we're promising that you might be a millionaire in terms of democratic values, and you might build a country that your children and grandchildren would want to be a part of. So that's what we're about. Ro Khanna, thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks for being with us. And we're going to keep joining with you in this fight.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being a voice that's inspiring many people across the country. And every progressive in Congress knows Jim Hightower and knows what you're doing. So thank you for all your work, and Deanna, thank you to you as well.
Keep at them. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you for joining the Chat and Chew. We'll be back in a few weeks with another one of these things. Yeah, we keep fighting. Whatever goes on, we're in the fight.